welcome to this week's Rupy Tuesday. So again, we've got a very special guest on the show today. This is my good friend Martyn Sibley. I've known Martyn for how long now?
Oh, a long time. Is it 10 years, maybe more now?
Possibly a little bit longer, yeah. And Martyn's just been a really great influencer in the disability field, but also just with his entrepreneurial journey. I can't keep up with this guy. He's absolutely amazing, and I'm really looking forward to interviewing him today. So yeah, should we get started, Martyn?
Let's do it. Thanks for having me on the show, Rupy.
Yeah. No worries. We're really excited. So just want to start off by asking you, for people who don't know you, if you could give us a bit of background as to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, okay. So I live down near Cambridge, so I grew up in this area. But I think our mutual contact originally when we met was our friend Rich.
Yeah.
And so I lived in the halls with Rich when I was at Coventry University, and there I did economics and a master's in marketing. And then soon after that, I lived and worked in London for about 5 years, a large charity who you were also involved with as well. Yeah. So our paths have crossed in different ways over time, really. And then, about 2011, I left my, stable job. It's the sort of entrepreneurial journey that when I decided I wanted to pursue my own passion and projects, and I quit my job. My mum was all right, but my dad was pretty freaked out about why I'd want to give up a stable income. But fortunately, through a lot of hard work and perseverance and roller coaster, I've sort of definitely the last few years it's been a bit more stable financially. But by leaving Scope, I was able to travel a lot. I've done a lot of media work. I'm, I guess, sort of ambassador about inclusion and accessibility. I've written a book. I co-founded Disability Horizons magazine, and that led to co-founding Accomable, which was an accessible travel site that we sold to Airbnb 2 years ago. But I guess to join all of my work together, the vision is about a world where everybody's included and there's no barriers that disable people. And I found that whilst a lot of my work is with disability, that's very relevant to everybody. That, even when you look at gender issues, race issues, it's those attitudinal barriers that are almost disabling all of the marginalized groups. And by seeing it in that bigger, more uniform way, you realize that if we can educate society about being inclusive, it leaves nobody behind. And that's what gets me out of bed and drives me forward every day.
That's amazing. You've done so much. So I suppose your motivation is to make the world a better and inclusive place for all kinds of people.
Yeah, as I say, a lot of day-to-day it's more in disability, but I feel that the more the marginalized groups can be together, the more powerful that message is. So that's sort of more where I'm wanting to take it in the future as well.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And you've done so many projects, and with the Airbnb stuff, and it's Disability Horizons. Am I right in saying that that's the largest community? Well, it's an online magazine, isn't it? So it's the largest online magazine for disabled people.
Yeah, I mean, there are other magazines and there are other communities, and I don't know exactly how the numbers all measure up, but we're pretty big now. We get about 600,000 people visit the site every year. So it's grown quite significantly from just Shrin and I did an article, and then we got some friends to write, and you've written on there as well. And over time it's just sort of got that snowball that the more people that read it, the more people wanted to write for it. And so all the articles are from the community. So it's about giving a voice to disabled people. That's our main mission.
Yeah, that's incredible. And why is this really important to you? Why, you were saying it helps you get out of bed in the morning. You're living to your kind of purpose and your mission. So why is that really important to you?
Well, I guess being in a wheelchair, I've experienced not being able to get into environmental, like get into a building or on transport. So there's those environmental barriers. I've had people that you can tell they presume that I'm, not as capable cognitively or going to be able to speak for myself just because they see I'm in a chair. So I've had attitudinal barriers, and then there's processes like having to phone up in advance to get a ramp on a train, when actually, what if you want to go spontaneously, or you don't know what time you're going to want to get a train the next day? So those processes have disabled me. So I guess I started out fighting for inclusion just so I could have a normal life, whatever normal is. I think then I've realised that there's a lot of other people. I mean, there's 13 million disabled people in the UK, 1.3 billion approximately in the world. So those barriers I've experienced touch a lot of other people in different ways as well. So it's just, for me, I think justice and fairness and equality are values that I value them a lot,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you were speaking there about certain challenges that you have faced and you still face. So would you mind maybe going into that a bit more and kind of like telling us how you've overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, there's never one golden shot or silver bullet of how you overcome. I think, that there are some things that are insurmountable. And so, I'm never going to run the 100 meters full stop, let alone in world record time. So, I would then avoid doing the things that are just clearly not my path. But then there are pathways I've taken full of pitfalls and barriers. And I think the way you overcome, and there's a combination of creativity and innovation, so that it might not be a linear path, but you sort of find ways of getting there in the end. But there's also those days where it's just crap, and you just have to be resilient and not give up. And you might even say for a day or a week, I'm going to just chill and get my energy back. So I think that there's a lot of different facets to overcoming barriers, but I guess overall there'd be that sort of creativity and resilience would be two big personality traits that I tried to use, or two tools that I've tried to use.
And how, like, so creativity and resilience, how do you know to use them tools? How do you become creative? How do you get that resilience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of it's been just, it happened over time, and I wasn't consciously like, oh, I'm being creative now, or I'm being creative. And then, as you start to sort of go through life, you start to reflect a bit on, like you're asking me now. When I look back, I can see sort of when I was being creative. Even just like being in the house, there's a step down to the garden, sort of from the decking to the grass. And so I had to get creative with how to build a ramp. And so one of my personal care assistants was up for just giving it a go, and we cut out some wood, and then we tried a different bit of material, and we made it so it wasn't too steep. And so and creatively, in the end, I'm able now to get down to the grass and sit in the actual garden and not just be up on the decking. But I guess in the end, creativity is just about like having ideas and joining the dots together to achieve that, whatever the goal or objective is.
Yeah, no, I think that's fascinating. And I also think, like, so I'm a bit entrepreneurial like you. So, and I think creativity and resilience are really important when you're working on solo projects.
Yeah.
So, can I just ask you kind of how you've applied those tools to your businesses?
Yeah. So, if you take that vision about the fact that we want it to be an inclusive world and there's barriers, you then sort of come back a step and say, well, so we need to educate society on how to reduce those or pull down the barriers. But the actual most powerful way is to empower disabled people to speak out against unfairness and injustice. And so with Disability Horizons, we really are trying to do that. That, you know, there are things that are happening that are already accessible. So we want to say, hey, did you know that you can go on a plane to the Canary Islands with your wheelchair or whatever it might be, and then just show what's possible? I think that's a massive benefit for the community, is just to see others like them doing it. And that's the same in business, right? When you see someone doing it, you may not do it the same way they did, but it's still just the fact it's possible shows that, you know, you can do it too. So I think if you then come down that level of, we want to educate society and want to empower disabled people, the creativity is just about, well, so, you know, what ways can we do that? And it's just about coming up with ideas and listening as well to those two audiences. But trial and error. It's not like day one we have an idea and it works and it's all done and dusted. You know, we're 8 years into Disability Horizons. The world still isn't totally inclusive. And if, you know, if the world was totally inclusive in my lifetime, that would be pretty phenomenal. But you know, we're talking about multi-generational cultural change. So I think that creativity is just about always upskilling, reading, and educating yourself and collaborating with others, and just sort of keep coming up with new ideas and not being scared of failure. And I suppose that's where resilience is, that when things go wrong, because they will, that you don't just give up and stay in bed forever. You still dust yourself off and you go again, you know, and you believe that in the long run you can make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you. We've touched on an inclusive world, but also with your entrepreneurial skills, you know, for that business owner who might have been working on a project for a couple of years and isn't really kind of seeing the results that they hope to have achieved, kind of what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a misconception that entrepreneurs are just crazy risk takers, almost like a Vegas gambling type. And yes, like it takes a certain kind of person to not have the structure of a salary and a sort of 9 to 5, and so that there's a bit of a risk in that sense. But you should always understand what your basic needs are and have them satisfied, because if you can't pay rent or mortgage and if you can't put food on the table, you can't change the world. So I think one thing is to be really clear on what the minimum livable income is. So you might, if you're coming out of another job, you know, change your lifestyle. You might not be able to afford some of the fancier things that maybe you had when you were salaried, but equally it doesn't, you know, it goes the other way and you have zero money. And I think in knowing what your base need and your lifestyle is while you're starting up in those first, it could be 5 years. I mean, that seems to be the litmus test. If a business survives 5 years, it's probably going to be able to carry on. But I don't know the stat, but a ton of businesses go under within that 5 years.
Yeah.
And so another part is that success is often survival in those early years.
Right.
Not the millions and the bling bling after 2 years. I think success often is just that you're able to keep going for another year or another month at a time. But yeah, from knowing what your basic income is and making sure you cover that, even if you have to do some freelance work or some part-time work, but still work on your dream and your passion and your business as well, you're not going to get as many grey hairs or go as bald or get as wrinkly as quick. And I've learned that the hard way. You know, when I left Scope, I had some projects lined up, but that I was like getting paid to run webinars for a while. That sort of model dried up after a few months. So I had to really reinvent how I could monetize myself or my business to just keep the lights on. And so I think the money matters is probably the biggest takeaway here. That if you've not got the basic your own stuff sorted, and obviously what the business needs. So if you've got software or a building that you need, or products, whatever it might be, you have to obviously make sure you cover the cost of the business. But once you know that that's sort of safe and okay, then you're more able to get creative and focus on the growth, so that in the long run, you can end up with more income and more impact from your business and all that kind of stuff.
No, that's really important. Thank you. I saw you mention it now, but I saw a post the other day about how you've reinvented yourself quite a few times during your entrepreneurial journey. So what were you talking about there, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, as I said on the post, that the vision and the mission has been consistent. Obviously some people might move to a different vision and mission and different businesses in their career, and I might in 10, 20 years, who knows, but generally it's about, I think this year it's 10 years I've been blogging, and then it's 8 years since being self-employed. And through that time the world changes, so there are environmental differences that you have to adapt, like the use of social media and new media. Podcasts have become more popular, whereas when I started vlogging, they weren't really that around. So there's a reinvention around the tools, upskilling and the tools that you use. But I think also you just you learn a lot as you go. And so what I thought would be an answer 10 years ago, I might learn through the journey that it's not in fact the right way. So I think reinventing yourself is just back to that, the resilience and the creativity, and understanding the community that you serve, what their needs are, and how you can keep changing to provide them with those elements. So it's not one thing, it's just about always being adaptive and flexible, really.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that's something that I've learned myself. I've not been in business for as long as you have, Martyn, but I think when we first set up in business, sometimes it's quite interesting as to how pigeonholed we can get. So we have a vision, and we have tunnel focus. So we have tunnel vision on what we're focused on, and then sometimes we miss the opportunities that are around us because we're not open-minded and we're not flexible enough. So I don't know whether that's similar to what you were saying there, but
it's a balance, because I think we were talking earlier about when you're entrepreneurial and you're passionate, there's always a million different projects. So I think that there has to be a focus and a persistency and a consistency. Otherwise, you're just too stretched and nothing gets traction. But as we've just said now, there are opportunities that come along that you should take. Some people, they have their idea of the perfect business or the perfect client, and they might want to turn down one that doesn't quite fit that dream vision. But at the end of the day, if that project or that monthly retainer is going to make sure that the mortgage gets paid in the short term, and it's not like you're selling your soul for something awful, it just might not be quite the dream client, I would say it's worth taking it.
Yeah.
That opportunity, it's still helping you build towards the future. And I think another part of all this is that we're all very much expecting instant gratification. You put out a post and you hope it goes viral, and you put out a product and you hope it sells millions. But I think, as we were saying a little bit before the interview, that overnight success is actually often following a lot of hard work and graft as well. And I think if we're doing our passion in our business, we're open to the fact that it's a long journey, and we're fine with that. And so if it takes 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to get really, then we'll do what it takes to get there, and we're not going to give up at the first knockback or the first sort of failure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally agree with you. So you said you've had like many projects, and I think, you know, the Airbnb one sounds terrific. So what happened with that?
Yeah, so with Disability Horizons, we've always struggled for like funding it because we don't really want to charge the community because it's always felt like the things we're offering are not really worth to be paid for.
Yeah.
And conversely, we also thought that businesses would advertise and sponsor, but I think there is a competitive market space with magazines and blogs for disabled people. And we've actually got some new ideas that we're working on that are going to start to sort of build on the magazine, but create a bit more of a uniqueness. And I think that will help some of the funding difficulties that we have faced on Horizons. But while we were going through the sort of motions of growing the mag and trying to fund it, we said, well, what kind of product or service could we create that the community would be willing and able to pay for? And Shrin and I, Shrin's obviously the co-founder of both Horizons and Accommable, we both sort of said, well, we're traveling a lot and we're seeing a lot of difficulties with finding accommodation. What if we could vet accommodations that would show the categories of accessibility for different disabilities, different impairments? And then essentially, if people book through Accommable, we would get a commission like any sort of travel website would, industry standard. But it would make it better for disabled people to travel, and it would make those that have made the effort to be accessible to getting more business from disabled people. So it was this sort of, theoretical win-win-win.
Yeah.
Obviously, as I've mentioned already, there's always a few war wounds in business. So it was, struggle to get the website live, get businesses to list properties, struggle to vet the validity of their information, and then a struggle to get disabled people to actually know about it and use it. But we managed to get some grant funding, then some angel investment, and then it still got to the point where the website needed a lot more development to really be what it could become. So it was at a crossroads of, do we get a ton more investment on something that, we're not so much techie people, or do you get someone that already has the tech, i.e. Airbnb, and then sort of work out how that can go? And that's the route we took. So Airbnb acquired the company, and then they're now basically looking at how to make Airbnb have the filters and check the information the way Accommable did. And over the long run, that's true inclusion, because a disabled consumer can go to a general consumer website like Airbnb, but still have their needs seen to. So it felt like a really good win-win-win situation.
It's definitely a good win-win. You're so modest when you talk about this. I don't think you actually realize how many people's lives you've impacted.
I was actually doing some work today on Horizon's footprint, and because we get 50,000 readers a month on the website, which is 600,000 if you times it by 12 in a year. But if you think, we obviously haven't always been at that level since day one, but for a couple of years we've been there at least, and then it gradually built up before that. But yeah, I mean that's millions of people that Horizons has impacted. But what's weird with digital entrepreneurship is you don't see that. Like you don't actually meet all those people. So it's quite abstract sometimes as well.
I can see why. But no, honestly, like when you and Spring were doing Accommable, I definitely used your website myself.
Right.
And then when I saw that it was acquired by Airbnb, I just thought that that's such an amazing step for for like in terms of what you guys did. Like I was really in awe and really proud and really empowered by what you and Spring did, because that's global company
Yeah.
that are taking accessibility really seriously.
Yeah. I mean, and the truth, like Trin, yeah, he's like phenomenal when it came to more of the sort of investment and with Airbnb. Like I put my hands up, like he really sort of helped make all that private home. And as a result, he's also working for Airbnb for 2 years, and I'd already sort of been more wanting to focus on the community side of Horizons. So it was all like it all worked out well.
Yeah.
There is this interim that the Airbnb sort of listing quality isn't as strong as what a comparable was. So there's this sort of short-term changeover that's obviously been a bit of a, just trying to get it, move it forward. But now the filters are being amended and it's Airbnb are really starting to push it.
Yeah.
In another year or two, there will be so many more properties that are accessible and listed than Comparable had when it was at its peak. So there's sort of, I wouldn't say a step backwards, but there's been a kind of transition really to get it to Airbnb. But I think what you're also talking about is the signal that disabled people can be entrepreneurial, and the signal that mainstream business understand the potential of serving disabled customers is massive, and it's now helping other entrepreneurs get started and other people to get funded and acquired because other businesses see the opportunity now.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think businesses sometimes forget, with the business model that they can ultimately, we are customers as well, and we can contribute a lot to their business.
Well, £250 billion is the British spending power of disabled households.
It's crazy.
So, like, that if you're just a restaurant or a cinema chain, and yeah, everywhere is getting better. But if you're not accessible, you're turning away a lot of money, basically.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's the social good element. There's the legal bit, the Equalities Act. You could be sued, but I quite like that there's the business argument that it's not just out of order and illegal, but you're just you're losing money on your business. Because
yeah, exactly. So there's I'm not going to name names, but there is a local restaurant in Manchester that's quite a big chain, and I really like the kind of food that they serve, and all it would take would be for them to install a little ramp, and they're not doing it, but like they kind of, obviously they've lost out on the custom of me, but also like my friends and my family, because I've not really heard anything positive to say about them.
Yeah.
So that and over time that could build up. So yeah, it definitely makes sense for businesses to go out there and to include people, and rightly so.
Yeah, and that's where the sort of future, the next chapter, if you like, on Horizons is, well, we've got this big community and we want to keep giving them information that's helpful, but actually we want them to be getting jobs and being able to spend their money with businesses. And so that's like the next wave, is how you bring the business community together with the disabled community.
Amazing mission and amazing aims. So one final thing, Martyn, two final things. This series is to, empower people who may be struggling or who may be at a low point in their life. So what kind of key message do you have for somebody who's sat at home and who may be feeling low or disempowered right now?
Yeah, great question. I think so. I can give a personal experience. I think that's important. That for everyone it's going to be different elements. But I definitely had a bit of a burnout through I mean, on more than one occasion I've got knackered and a bit ill. But I definitely had one particular sort of real burnout situation. And I think partly it is just about self-care, that you need to make sure you sleep enough, you eat well, you get exercise, all that sort of stuff is really, really important. I think, you know, having time with loved ones as well and switching off and leisure time is also important. So essentially, you can't do a 24/7 job or a 24/7 business. You have to have those times out to look after yourself and just to have fun. But then in terms of like with the business, I think it is about upskilling, well, not so much upskilling, but yeah, personal development really.
Yeah.
So I'm a big reader. I go to seminars. I do online courses because it often gives you those sort of fresh ideas and new input that keeps you interested in the day-to-day grind. And one thing I found really good relatively more recently is networks. Like I've always been a networker in terms of trying to grow a community, but I've started to have my own network where they're not involved maybe even in disability, but they're like local businesses, or there's another one I use called Mind Valley, where once a year we go to a new country and they have like Mind Valley University with all speakers and all the workshops. But the real gold dust is that you make new friends and you start to help each other, so that when you have those low days, you've got a group. Like family and friends are good, but they might not get the entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And so having fellow entrepreneurs basically really helpful, because they can partly just listen and say, yeah, I get it, it's a crap day, it happens, you know, but they also can maybe help you come up with, if there is an issue causing it, to like tackle that as well. And so you can find that if you realize there is an issue, they'll help you to even overcome that problem in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. So hanging out with the right sort of people who can lift you up, I think it's really important. Yeah, and kind of self-development and upskilling your skills basically.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Martyn. So if people at home want to find out more about you, where can they go?
So my blog is martynsibley.com, Martyn with a Y. Everyone always does an I. So yeah, MartynSibley. And I'm on all like social media channels. And then Disability Horizons is disabilityhorizons.com. So yeah, if someone's more generally entrepreneurial, I do a thing every week called World Changer Wednesday, and that's very much about empowering the sort of change makers and that vibe. And then if anyone watching or listening is disabled, and they're looking for more support with travel or specific to being disabled, then yeah, Disability Horizons is obviously a good place to go to.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Martyn. I'm so grateful for you, to spend a bit of time to speak to me today. And I'm sure our audience at home really enjoyed this episode. So thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye.